One of the things I quickly realized is that if you're doing the same things that other investors are doing, you're going to have a lot of competition. And more importantly, you're going to have a hard time finding those deals. So we wanted to create something a little bit different. And that's what we've done with the Power of Zero.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers. Learn more at pointcentral.com. Hello and welcome to episode 107. Today we're going to talk about creative financing for real estate investments. My guest is Chris McClatchey, and he was able to buy over 100 rental units valued at over $7 million with no money down and 0% seller financing. And today we're going to find out how he did it and how he educates other highly qualified individuals on ways that they too can build a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio using creative financing techniques, private lenders, partnerships, and retirement accounts. Chris is also going to be a featured speaker at the RPOA's annual free Investor Conference and Expo, which is happening in Grand Rapids, Michigan, February 22nd through 24th of 2018. And you can go to rpoaonline.org to find out more. Chris's topic at the conference will be the power of zero. And Chris, I can't wait to find out what that means. Thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
So I am extremely excited to find out how you were able to acquire a $7 million portfolio with no money down and 0% seller financing. But before we go there, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into real estate investing in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I appreciate that. I grew up in Ohio, real close to the great state of Michigan, where you guys are located. And, I grew up in kind of a blue-collar, neighborhood, and my father only had a high school education. He had to work 2, 3, sometimes 4 jobs in order to, support, the family. I'm the oldest of 5. And he always wanted my mother to stay home and, be a stay-at-home mom for us. And one of the things that he always instilled in all of us, not just myself, but my brothers and sisters as well, is that in order to be successful, you have to get a good education. You have to be willing to work really hard. I'm very grateful that he instilled those, values in us because I did what he asked me to do. I went out, got a college education. I went on to go law school, graduated from law school. I passed the bar exam in 2 different states. And what I found out was that you really don't make a lot of money, and that, traditional education doesn't correlate very well with being successful. So I wanted to figure out a different way to do it. And even as I was working my full-time job, Brian, I knew that there had to be a better way. And that's when I found real estate. I found how to, build wealth through real estate. And I read a few books. I bought a course from, an expert, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
Yeah, well, tell us, what was the course you bought? Who was the expert, and did you try any of those techniques?
Oh, absolutely. I read some of the, Robert Allen books, and I also bought a course off of the TV. I'm probably dating myself because I don't know that he's on anymore, but I bought a course by Carlton Sheets on creative financing. Oh, yeah. And I absolutely, used some of those techniques. My wife and I, when I bought the course, we really didn't have a lot of money. We were really watching, every dime because we didn't have a lot of money, and we had, a baby on the way. And her rule to me was very simple. If you're going to spend money that we don't really have, on a course like this, then you better do something with it. And so I made a promise to her and made it happen. One of the things that I realized, and it's kind of going to segue into, what I do now is I learned very valuable lessons in that course, and I've learned very valuable lessons in the books. But one of the things I quickly realized is that if you're doing the same things that other investors are doing, you're going to have a lot of competition, and more importantly, you're going to have a hard time, finding those deals. So we wanted to create something a little bit different, and that's what we've done with the Power of Zero.
So the Power of Zero, why don't you explain to us what that means and how you discovered it?
Well, I appreciate, absolutely, be happy to. One of the things that, I started to do, I've been an investor for 20 years, Brian, and for about the first 10 of those, I was kind of a, DIYer, do-it-yourselfer, and I tried to do everything on my own, and although I was learning from others, what I realized is that doing things the conventional way takes a lot longer. And so even though we had built up a substantial portfolio with rental properties the conventional way, I still found that the banks were getting most of my money. And, I worked really hard to find the deal. I worked really hard, to structure it and to, manage it. And I was left, the money I was making was the leftover cash flow, and the banks seemed to be getting most of my money.
Yeah, explain that before you go on. The conventional way of investing in real estate, is that basically getting a bank loan and having your tenants pay your mortgage?
Absolutely, it is, and it's getting any kind of loan that has a traditional amortization schedule, meaning, for those beginning investors out there, that anytime you go to a bank for a loan, you're put on a payment schedule. And what most people don't realize is that in the first 7 years of that loan, the majority of that payment is going to interest, which means that's the bank's profit. And as a result, you're gaining very little principal equity or principal reduction until after year 7, and more likely even after year 15. And so even though I was making money through cash flow, I wasn't seeing my portfolio wealth growing as fast as I wanted to. And then when we had the downturn and recession of 2006, 2007, I realized quickly that even though I had some principal reduction by that point in time, when the values of the properties came down, it took away all of that, profit that had been accumulating for years. And I started to think there had to be a better way. There had to be a way, even if you're doing creative financing, to not be subject to banks or even lenders that have these traditional amortization schedules. And that's where I came up with the Power of Zero.
Before we get on to the Power of Zero, the traditional portfolio that you built, what did that look like?
I was mainly investing in duplexes, triplexes, and quads at that time. What I was doing, and again, remember, this is years ago. This is almost 20 years ago. We were doing short sales before they were called short sales. We had a relationship with a bank up in Wisconsin. They've since been bought out by Chase. So they don't exist anymore. But we had a relationship with their loss mitigation department, and anytime they had a homeowner or a property in distress or in having back payments, they were allowed at that time, prior to the Patriot Act, to call investors to see if investors wanted to either buy the note or buy the property. And so what we would do is we would buy these properties at a discount, sell them, but then rather than take the profit for myself, I would take the profit from those deals and use it as a down payment on a fourplex that I would finance conventionally. And like I said, this is the way I thought I had to do it at that time, because I didn't have a lot of money, expendable money. So this was my way of creating down payments from other deals and buying what I thought would be long-term, hold properties. And while that definitely got me a great education as to how real estate works, it also kind of left me longing for more and longing for better ways to do things. And that's what we teach now.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. Yeah, because it sounds like doing it the traditional way, you were able to build a decent portfolio, but your cash flow, most of your cash flow is going to pay off the loan and the interest on the loan. It sounds like you realize, well, hey, there's got to be a better way where I can keep more of this cash flow. And that's what led to the power of zero.
Absolutely. And yes, we had over 30 rentals in our portfolio within the first 3 years. So successful, by many standards. But you're right. We were left with just a little bit of cash flow. And what I kept telling myself and what I kept hearing is that, if you are a buy and hold investor, you have to basically wait for the long-term wealth because you have to give yourself time in order to get those principals reduced enough to give you enough equity to build your portfolio. And so while I was very happy with what I had accomplished and I was happy with the cash flow that was coming in, I wanted a better way so that I could have both the cash flow and the wealth a lot faster.
How did you come across a new way of doing it? How did you find this better way?
It was really by chance, Brian, and just taking in some thought. What happened is back in 2007 and 2008, most of the country was in a recession, or at least in a downward economic trend, and a lot of people were struggling with expendable cash. And as I was driving in my car one day, I heard a radio announcement or a radio advertisement for a car dealership that was advertising 0% financing. And they started in the ad, they started to say that you can save so much in interest by getting the 0% interest loan. And what the car dealers were doing is they were trying to sell cars. Nobody was buying cars because we were in a recession. So they were using this 0% financing as an incentive for people to buy cars. And that kind of kicked off an idea in my head that, I later sat down at my desk and started to do some numbers and some calculations. And I started to say, well, if you can save a few $1,000s in car interest over a 5 or 6 year period, how much interest could you save on a house or an apartment building over a 30-year loan? And what I found, Brian, was astounding. You literally can save hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest if you can get the seller to give you 0% financing. And it was at that point in time I realized I had something that nobody else had, and now I just had to develop it.
So talk about that. How did you develop this, and how did you go out into the world and actually try it?
Well, it was interesting because I was, at the time, keep in understand that, what people will see when I come up in February is kind of a finished product, meaning it's a refined system that I have. But it wasn't always that way because I had, was still doing things traditionally or conventionally like other investors. So it was really a trial and error. It was really see what worked and what didn't work. I remember the very first deal that I did with 0% financing. A lady had called. She had inherited a house from her father who passed away. And she didn't want to live there. She was ready to move out to the West Coast, and she was trying to sell it, and she wanted to sell it for $85,000. Well, it wasn't worth $85,000. So I went in and I was doing, again, what all the other investors are doing. I give her a low ball offer, And, she looked at it and she says, "This is the fourth offer I've received like this." And I said, "Well, okay, but if this doesn't work for you, what will?" And she goes, "I want my price." I said, "But it's not worth your price of $85,000. She goes, "I don't care how you do it. Just get me my price." And that's when I was like, okay, now I get it. So I gave her a down payment to move out to the West Coast. And I gave her some money coming in each month. But I told her that if I'm giving you $85,000, you have to give me 0% interest financing. So I did overpay on that property by about $10,000. Now, most investors, that would, you'd sit back and you go, well, why would you overpay for something? And because I had done the calculations, if I had gone out and gotten a $75,000 loan, I would have not only paid that $75,000 back, I would have paid about $75,000 in interest as well. So, in other words, the total price of that house would have been about $150,000 over a 30-year period. But I paid $85,000 with 0% interest, so that the total cost of my house was $85,000. So in other words, I saved about $65,000 of interest. But I also got that house free and clear in 7 years because of that. And so now I have 23 years of mortgage-free rent coming in that I would not have had otherwise. And I knew that I could, be very successful paying full price, or sometimes even more than full price, but getting it on my terms, and I would still come out way ahead of the traditional investors.
Let's talk for a moment about Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers, and how their exciting technology can help you control property access to vendors and potential tenants. No more time wasted waiting for late appointments or no-shows. Oversee energy usage and analyze data in order to reduce utility and maintenance expenses. Eliminate the cost of keys or rekeying locks. Command higher rents and increase tenant retention, and provide tools for tenants and managers to monitor the property to improve safety and security. And it's all done through cloud technology, utilizing encrypted data and private cellular service. And best of all, the return on investment of installing Point Central's technology is upwards of 25% a year. The future of property management is here, and you can find out more by visiting pointcentral.com. Two very interesting takeaways from what you just told us there. Number one is that quite often the seller will tell you what they want. And those who listen are those who can ultimately get the deal. She wanted $85,000 and she didn't care about the terms. And you came up with the right terms and able to give her that. And this sounds like it's turned into a great investment for you. The other thing is price is not the main consideration when it comes to doing these types of deals. Terms are what's more important. And you were able to work out some fantastic terms that really saved you money over a long period of time, saved you a lot of money.
Saved me a lot of money, and that was just on a single family house. And you are absolutely right, Brian. And I don't remember exactly. I think I saw it on a real estate agents or articles website that about over 90% of people, when determining whether to buy or sell a house, they look at one thing and one thing only, and that's the price. And what I am going to show in February and show the people on this call is that price is probably the most irrelevant term of the contract. The price doesn't matter if you can get your terms. In fact, part of the presentation I'm going to do when I come up is I'm going to buy somebody in the audience's house. And usually typical people have houses that range anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000. But I'm going to show you that I can pay $5 million for that house and still make that house massively profitable for myself, because price is, in my belief, almost irrelevant.
Well, since we're kind of going in this direction, let's just talk for a minute about what what the different terms are that we can look at when structuring a deal. Obviously, price is just one term, and that is not your main consideration. What are the other terms that you look at and that you try to take control of?
Well, obviously, you have to make sure that you're making money on it. I believe there are three elements to a good deal in my system. The first element is that the deal has to make you money. It has to make financial sense. If it's not making you money, then it's probably not a good deal. So obviously, with regards to that, then you need to make sure that you're getting cash flow each month, or you're getting that principal reduced significantly each month. The second part of the deal that I believe to be a good deal is that you have to have very little or even no money into the deal. Because if you have very little or no money into the deal, you're not really at risk. It's really a less risky, investment, which is obviously the third element to the good deal, to a good deal. And that third element is that you have little or to no risk. I mean, if you can find deals that make you money, you can not have any money or very little money into the deal, and they have little to zero risk. I mean, who wouldn't do those types of deals? And that's exactly what we do, and that's exactly how we teach you to find it. I know I gave you the example of the single family house, our very first one, but obviously we've refined our system since then, and more importantly, we've really refined who you should be targeting to find these types of deals, and I call that the avatar seller. And what the avatar seller is most investors are out there looking for properties. Most of them are looking for houses or apartments or self-storage units that are for sale. I don't look for properties. This is a different perspective that most investors don't take. I look at investing very differently because I don't look for properties. I look for sellers. I look for sellers who can do the types of deals that I want to do.
Wow. Well, let's go there. That you call that the avatar seller. What is your avatar seller, and how do you find them?
Well, you're kind of jumping ahead, Brian, to my presentation.
Okay. Well, we don't want to give away the story here.
But I will say this: the avatar seller changes depending upon your type of investing. For example, if I was a rehabber or a wholesaler, the type of person that the rehabber or the wholesaler would be looking for is different than the avatar seller that I would be looking for. And there are 4 criteria of things that I look for in sellers that will determine whether they are capable or willing to do my type of deals. And my type of deals are very simple. I want to buy houses and apartment buildings that have no money down or 0% financing capabilities. And so when they come in February, I'm going to give you those exact 4 criteria of the avatar seller.
Well, let's talk about some of the other deals you've done and some other examples. I mean, you bought that first house for $85,000, seller financing, 0% interest. Where did you take it from there? Did you find a similar type deal, or how did you begin to refine your system?
Absolutely. And again, the second deal was another single family house that we did. Similar terms, different price, different payment, but similar terms. But shortly after that second deal, I found a 14-unit apartment building for sale. And this is really what changed the game for me, because this 14-unit building was owned by a married couple who were in their 70s, and the husband had just gone blind from diabetes. And as a result, they weren't able to care for the building as much as they had been in the past. But they loved the residual income, which is why they bought the apartment building in the first place. And so I offered them a solution. I said, I'll take the building, I'll take over all the tenant headaches, but I'll pay you, a monthly income so that you can still have the passive income coming in. Now, the challenge for them is that the property had been on the market for over 120 days at that point in time. And the reason it was on the market for over 120 days is because it was overpriced. And they had all these other investors coming in and offering them low-ball offers, which to this couple felt like they were trying to, quote, steal, end quote, their property from them. And so because they were focused on price and because they were focused on passive income, we were able to give them their price and the passive income, so we became the people they wanted to deal with. We became the problem solvers. And as a result of that deal, we were able to save over $700,000 of interest by overpaying by about $40,000 or $50,000. The property was listed for $740,000. We paid them $740,000, but we saved over $700,000 of interest on that deal. And as a result, that 14-unit apartment building will be free and clear in 10 years from when we bought it. I bought that building 7.5 years ago. I am literally within 2.5 years of having a $750,000 property that produces $100,000 of income free and clear, and that will all come in without a mortgage on the property, keeping in mind that if I had financed that conventionally, I would still have an additional 20 years on the loan that I don't have now.
Wow, so that's very compelling. And it sounds like you've been able to do this time and time again. You have over 100 units that you've been able to purchase this way.
Absolutely. And, I have a 24-unit building. I have a couple 14-unit buildings, an 8-unit, 12-unit. In fact, I just bought something. I just bought a 5-unit apartment building that is direct ocean in Cocoa Beach that way. Cocoa Beach, Florida, meaning it literally you walk out your front door and you are on the beach. I mean, how cool is that? It's really been amazing, and I'm really, really blessed and thankful for the concept, and I can't wait to teach it.
So, Chris, all this sounds great. But a lot of people out there are thinking, "Hey, I've tried this before. I've heard people have tried this." It's very hard to convince a seller to sell a property with owner financing. How do you take an owner through your system and convince them that this is the way for them to go?
Yeah, Brian, I understand. There's a lot of skepticism out there, and in fact, before, when I told people what I was going to do and attempt to do when I first started this program, I had a lot of major educators or a lot of people who were well renowned in the industry tell me there is no way a seller's going to give you 0% financing, and I kind of took that as a challenge. And so, what I really thought of and what I really began to rationalize on how to get somebody to do this is I had to put them through a process. I had to put them through a step-by-step process in order to make them feel comfortable with me. Because really, people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. And asking somebody for owner financing, you're asking them for a long-term relationship. So they have to know you and like you and trust you. If they don't, they're not going to give you owner financing. So I developed a few things that helped along the way. I call it the LOAN process, the LOAN process. And what that stands for, it's an acronym for the process that I use to put these sellers through. The first part, the L, stands for leads. Now, that may sound generic to most investors, but it's not generic to my system and the people who use it. When I say leads, I don't mean just any old lead. I mean leads that specifically find these types of potential sellers. I mentioned it a little earlier. Part of the leads process that we generate is called the avatar seller. The avatar seller is the ideal type of seller for these types of properties. And what we'll do is we'll market to them, we'll look for them, we'll go after them. But the mere fact that they are already a lead potential for my type of system will help down the line, because they're already somebody that has the capability to do this type of financing. The second part is called offers. The O stands for offers. Now, most people give a seller one offer and one offer only. And I think, Brian, that's a big mistake. I think that people feel when you give them one offer, they feel kind of backed into a corner, and they feel like you're trying to, steal their house from them. And so we developed two things called the 7-touch approach and the 3-offer approach. The 7-touch approach, basically what that does is it's 7 specific points of contact that we have with a seller prior to making an offer, so that they feel comfortable with us. They feel like they have a rapport with us. They feel like we have a relationship. And then after the 7th point of contact, we then give them our offers, but we don't give them just one offer. We give them 3 offers, and they are 3 different offers. And so now the seller feels like they have a choice, and they're not backed into a corner. And now you've built up credibility with them, because you already have a rapport from the 7-step approach. Now you're giving them choices. They're going to want to deal with you more than any other investor. Brian, I'll tell you that I have had sellers sell me their property even though I was not the best financial offer to them, because they said they felt like they could trust me and they knew me. I cannot stress you enough how important this is. The A stands for analyze. Most of the time when you go to a bank for a loan, the bank will look at your numbers and then say, okay, based on your income and expense and your net operating income, this is what you can afford, this is what your interest rate's going to be, and this is what your payment's going to be. And if a bank's controlling the amount of the loan, if the bank's controlling the interest rate, and if the bank's controlling the payment, quite honestly, the bank is in control of your cash flow and your portfolio. And what we're going to teach you is that you don't have to deal with banks. You don't have to deal with mortgage companies. You don't have to deal with lenders. I have not bought a property in the last 8 years where we've put any type of conventional financing on the property, because it doesn't give you control. It gives the control you think you have of your portfolio, and it gives it to the banks. And what we do is we teach you how the numbers work in the analysis section to make that happen and to take that control. The final thing we do is it's called negotiations. Really, negotiation is one thing and one thing it's only, and it's your ability to communicate. And what we teach you is to communicate in such a way that you can get 0% financing. One example of that, Brian, is most people they don't even have a second thought as to the type of words and phrases that go into their offers. They don't take into account how those words and phrases have an effect on the seller. And when most investors write their offers, they write them from what I call a taking perspective. In other words, they're telling the seller what they want to take from the seller. We want your house at this price. And usually when someone tries to take something from you, the defense mechanisms go up. But what if you could write that offer from using words and phrases and language that takes the perspective from a taking perspective and turns it into what I call a giving perspective. In other words, we take the focus off what we want and we put the focus on what the seller receives. And when you give somebody something, the natural human reaction is to be receptive and to give you something back. And so what we're going to do is teach you how to lower the defenses of the sellers, increase their the giving language so that they also want to give you in something in return, and watching how language and communication affects the deals and affects your success rate as an investor.
Both presentation of the offer and then the psychology of the seller are very important to your methods.
Absolutely, and if they're not important to other investors' methods, it's probably the one reason the investor isn't doing the number of deals they want. You have to understand the psychology of the seller. You have to understand, how a seller is going to react to these types of offers. And if you're not using words and phrases to take that into account, then that's probably one of the reasons you are leaving those seller meetings without a signed contract.
It sounds like a great system. I can't wait to learn more about that. But I'd imagine some people out there are thinking, well, all this still sounds great, but the market's very hot right now, and there's a lot of competition out there. How do your methods work in the market that we're seeing right now? And by the way, we're recording in late November of 2017, and I don't know what your markets are like, but our market here in Grand Rapids is red hot.
I understand, and it's red hot where we are too, and it's actually red hot around most of the country. I will tell you that, obviously in any investment scenario, no matter whose methods you're using, the more of a buyer's market it is, the easier it is. However, most markets right now are in what we call seller's markets. To give you an idea of how hot the market is where I am currently, we only have about 1.9 months of inventory. And for those people on the call or listening in that don't understand what that means we're about 2 months shy, 2 months of inventory shy of being in a stabilized market. So in other words, we're in a really hot market. And even in hot markets, these deals are there. In fact, I'll show our MLS. I'll show some deals that are out there right now that are available even in these super hot markets. And in fact, Brian, I just closed on a mobile home park right here in Florida that I got 0% financing on. That will be free and clear in 6.5 years in this hot market. I just put a single family house on Merritt Island, Florida, under contract, 0% financing that will be free and clear in 10 years. So even though we're in this super hot market, the deals are still there, and I just, within the last 3 weeks, got 2 more.
So you're proving the concept over and over again. So as we wrap it up here, what have I not asked you, or what have we not talked about that we should talk about?
You have to understand that this is going to be a volume game, meaning you have to have a thick skin because there's going to be some naysayers out there. In fact, there's a lot of real estate agents that don't believe in what we're doing, and they don't understand what we're doing. In fact, I had a real estate agent call, my office, and just short of using profanity, gave a, anger-laced tirade to, one of the people in my office because how dare we submit such an offer? So understand that, there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there. There's going to be people, other investors, there's going to be other real estate agents that don't understand what we're doing, how we're doing it. Some people are even going to call it, quote, illegal. It's not. But usually when people don't understand something, they automatically go to the defensive mode. Understand that you can't get discouraged. It doesn't matter whether you're using my system or somebody else's system. You have to see it through. You have to be willing to take action, and you have to be willing to fail a few times in order to be successful. And I think that's true in any type of business or any type of investment strategy. I mean, heck, if I had stopped this after my first rejection, we wouldn't be on the call right now. I had a lot of no's. I had a lot of people tell me this wouldn't work, but I knew it would, and I had the fortitude, and I knew that if I stuck with it and took action and took the right actions, that it would work, and it has. I mean, if you had asked me 15 years ago if I'd be enjoying the life that I'm enjoying now, I would have told you that there's no way. I literally work less than 10 hours a week in my investments, Brian. I work less than 10 hours a week. I take my daughter to and from school every day. I coach their basketball teams, their volleyball teams. Last year we took 9 vacations. This year we're taking 8. I mean, it's a lifestyle that I would never ever had dreamed of, all because we thought a little bit differently and put a system together that works.
Well, your presentation is called The Power of Zero, and you'll be sharing your nothing down techniques, your 0% seller financing techniques, and creative financing techniques. And you'll be speaking at the RPOA's annual free real estate investor conference and expo, which is right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You'll be speaking on Thursday, February 22nd. The conference runs from February 22nd through the 24th of 2018. Right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you can go to the rpoaonline.org to find out more and to register for free. Chris, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I can't wait to hear the rest of your presentation when you come to Grand Rapids.
Thank you, Brian. I really do appreciate it. I love coming to your group. I know I was there about 2-3 years ago, and you guys run a great group, and I'm always appreciative of you having me back, and thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers. Learn more at pointcentral.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.